So, a little backstory. I met this guy when he moved to my town during my junior year of high school. I was with a friend of mine, and he seemed to really like her. She told me she would go over to his house whenever she wanted someone to buy a cheap cigar for her. He was 18. Then my friend told me he was having a party and that she wanted me to come with her. I trusted her to protect me at the party, as long as she was sober. However, I doubted she would be sober the whole time, and she might possibly pass out. Lucky for me, I just met a guy at school that I really liked. I figured I'd use this party as an excuse to text him and ask him to stay on the line with me while I was at the party. I went to these parties a few times. Eventually, I started dating the guy I met at school, and he wanted me to stop going to the parties. The guy who was throwing them started showing a strong interest in me instead of my friends. A little while after I stopped going, he moved away and I didn't hear from him again for another year. When I graduated high school, the guy I was dating and I got pretty serious. He went into the army, and I got a job at the local gas station for the summer. Everything was going great, and eventually, I got engaged. Then, one day, the party guy comes back. He comes in with a few guys from my old class, but quickly ditches them in order to talk to me for nearly 2 hours while I was on the clock. My boss told him to leave me alone during my shift. He called him my boyfriend a couple times. However, English wasn't his first language, so I had a problem explaining my situation to him that this guy was nowhere near that. He then started coming to work every day asking if I was working. If I was, he'd stay waiting for me to get on my shift. If I wasn't, he'd go to my house. If I wasn't at home or at work, he'd knock on my door and convince my mom that I had promised to hang out with him, and she would let him in to sit on the couch to wait for me. My boss told him that he couldn't visit me at work unless his main reason for the trip was to buy something and he didn't keep me from working. I remember my boss pointing out to me that he was circling the gas station in his car one night. He asked me if I was getting picked up after my shift. I told him that I wasn't, and he laughed it off. Neither my boss nor my mom understood how creepy this shit was. I would constantly come home to him sitting on my couch. I would tell my mom that he was stalking me and that I didn't want to see him again. My mom was adamant that I not hurt his feelings and said he obviously just had a little crush on me. He would talk to me for hours after work about how much he liked me, and my sister. I would constantly tell him that I was engaged and didn't want to hang out with him because he was obviously flirting with me. Then he would say he was really there to see my sister, who was also in a committed relationship and didn't want to see him. He went back and forth, not paying any attention to the fact that neither of us were interested in having anything to do with him. I didn't talk to my fiancé about it, because he was all the way in Florida and there was nothing he could do about it anyway. I told him about my problem with my mom and her drunk friends, and he offered to take some kind of emergency leave and come get me before he finished secondary training, but I didn't want that. I knew that telling him about this guy would only add to the pile, so I didn't. After 2 months of staying far away from work or home whenever I could, I finally decided to take up my father-in-law's offer to come live with him until my fiancé got out of training. I didn't tell my mom or my stalker where I was going. I stayed up all night packing my stuff, and I took my car to my father-in-law's house. I privated all my social media and blocked my stalker and all his friends. Then a few months later, my fiancé and I got married and moved far, far away from that place. I still haven't talked to him a lot about it. However, I know he has no way to come here and find me, so it doesn't matter.